I have a simple test example here that we're going to use for plotting and stuff, but other than that, we can get started. So once you're in R, the first thing you're going to want to do is open up a new file here, and you're going to go to Shiny Web App. You can type in a name here. I'm going to name it Sleep Dashboard. And I like to do multiple files. If you want to do a single file, you can. But if you're just following along and learning this for the first time, I suggest doing a multiple file. And you want to make sure you put that in the correct directory. Mine already is, so I'm just going to hit OK and hit Create. Now what this is going to do is it's going to create two files for you, and they're going to have some stuff already put in there. You'll have a UI file and a server file. And so we can just quickly look through this and see what we have. This isn't super important, so I'm just going to get rid of it because it's kind of in the way. But here you can see an example of what a very, very simple Shiny app could look like. So you can see this isn't super important right now, but you kind of have something that opens up the Shiny UI, which is user interface, as well as a fluid page, which makes a single page. We have a title, a sidebar with the panel in it, and in that panel we're going to have an input where we can use a slider, and then we're going to have the actual output of our plot that we're making. So I'm going to go ahead and save that, and I'll jump over to the server. There's a few things over here. You have one single function that creates the server, and then within that you have separate functions that are going to create all your separate outputs, and you're going to get into some other things, but I'll explain that as we go. So now that that's out of the way, let's just run this real quick and see what a very simple Shiny app can look like. So I'll hit Run App in the top there, and it's going to open up a new window. And you can see here's our basic Shiny app that comes right out of the box. So we see we can use this, we can change the number of bins, and the histogram will change as a result. So that's pretty cool. But let's go ahead and X out of that. So now we know what a simple one looks like, and let's look at our data and see what exactly we want to do with it. So you can see here we have a date column, a sleep column, a work column, a school column, and a relax column. So this represents hours in the day that you're doing these separate things. I know these don't add up to 24. Bear with me. I just made this for simplicity's sake. We're going to do this for an example. So you can see that we have dates here, September 19th through October 1st, and then how many hours a day that someone is sleeping, working, going to school, and relaxing. So my thought for this is that we want a single page layout, like similar to what we have now, and we're going to want a few separate plots, and eventually I'd like a user to be able to put in a new line into this table. So today we're just going to get a few plots up. And then in subsequent episodes of this, I'm going to actually continue on this app and make it into something that looks a lot more cool. But today we're just going to get those plots up, and we're going to see kind of the different things that you can do with Shiny. So I'm going to go back to the UI, and let's first just change the title. So I'm going to take out this old title, and I'm going to name this Time Management Dashboard. And so anytime you make a change, you can just hit Control S and save it, and run it again to make sure that it worked. So now, instead of old geyser, it's Time Management Dashboard. And again, we still have those same elements that we did before. Now, I don't necessarily need this slider input, which is that bin size thing. So let's just get rid of that. I'm not going to completely get rid of it, but I'm just going to comment it out so it's not in the way when we're pulling up the app. However, we'll leave this for now. That's going to be the plot that was there before. But first, let's jump over to the server. Now, so we have a histogram for the distribution plot for the old data set that existed in the app before this one, but we want to use our new data set, right? So I'm going to again comment this one out. And let's figure out what we want. So go back to our data and we'll look at this. So I feel like the most important thing is going to be sleep. So let's do that first. And let's just look at the distribution of sleep. I think that would work pretty well. So let's just do that. So how we're going to do this is we're going to type in output and then $, and then you can name it whatever you want. I'm going to name this sleep dist. So it's the distribution of sleep. You can see we have render plot above here, but I'm actually going to do something a little different. because I don't want to just use base R for plotting. I want to use ggplot. So I'll save that. Why do we have an X here? Unmatched opening bracket. Okay, I can't comment that out because I need that needs to match the sidebar panel. So that's why there was an X there. But now I'll save that. I'll go back to the server. So now we have ggplot. And what do I want to do? I want to render plot again. So what this does is it's just telling us everything within here is going to be a plot, and once it's made, we need to render that into the dashboard, right? So if you guys know ggplot, I'm going to start. I'll just do a simple one to start. So I'll do ggplot. I'm actually going to save this and run it real quick so that ggplot's loaded in, and those pop-ups will come up to help me out. So right now you're not seeing anything because I commented everything out. We'll just X out of that. So now we have ggplot, and it should pop up. So we're gonna, yep, there it is. So aesthetics, we want our X variable to be, what's the name of it? Sleep with a capital S. Let's go data equals, and then example Excel. That's the name of our file. And then aesthetic X equals sleep. All right, and then ggplot, you do the addition symbol. And then we want geom histogram. So our x-axis is sleep. I don't think we need to put anything else in here. It'll just autofill that. Unexpected token. Why is that? Why is that an unexpected token? No, there we go. Okay, it went away. So now we have should just have a basic histogram on there. We've made it in the server. Now we want to get that into the user interface. So I'm just going to show you for an example. Nothing's going to show up when I make this because I have not called it yet. But if I run it, you can see, if you don't trust me, nothing shows up. That's because we need to call this output in the user interface, which is what the user actually sees. So I'm going to go back to the UI and remember how so here's this main panel, and then we apply output Distibution, but we commented out Distibution in the server, which was up here. So we're going to go back and we're going to just change this to this right here. So sleep dist. Save that. Let's go ahead and run it now. All right, now we can see that we have a discrete histogram of sleep. You can kind of see. I don't really like that because since this isn't a continuous variable, it doesn't show up like right next to each other. They're discrete values. But for now, I think this is going to work fine. So we can see that 4 out of the 14 days, we slept 5 hours, we slept 6 hours, and then 2 out of the 14 days, we slept 7 hours, 2 out of the 14 days, we slept 8, and 1 out of the 14, we slept 4. So that's kind of telling, but not super. I think eventually we're going to make that into a different plot, but for now, let's do a little bit of styling with that. So it doesn't look great right now. Maybe just a title and maybe some better labels on the X and Y axis would look a little bit better. So we can just quickly do that. We'll X out of there, go back to the server. And so we'll go back to our ggplot function. And so now we need to do a title, which let's see if I can quickly figure out how to do a title because I don't really remember. So I'm just scrolling through here. It doesn't look like there's anything with geom title. Is it title? We can try title, and we'll just type distribution of hours slept. And we'll go ahead and save that and run it again, and let's see if the title shows up on our plot now. No, it does not. So that means it was not the correct So this is what I mean. This is why I wanted to do it live so you guys can see where I make mistakes. So let's just do how to put title on ggplot. So it's gg title. Okay, we'll go back. gg title, distribution of hours slept. We'll save it again and run it. Okay, now we can see that there is a title on there. And let's just do the y-axis. So we'll do y label. That's y lab. Y label is number of nights. How can we title that? Count of. Well, I will just leave it at count. Actually, that's fine. But I do want to change the x label to say hours slept. We'll just do hours slept. And we'll save that. Alright, so now you're going to see we have our plot, we have our title, we have our labels. So that's great. So now we have one plot and we have this sidebar with nothing in it. So, what can we do there? So maybe we want to add in a filter, right? So let's just go into our data set and see how date is kept. Is date kept? So it's left as an unknown variable, which is fine. So we're going to have to change that into a date object. But let's do we're going to get rid of this now. So, but in that sidebar panel, what we're going to do is we're going to do date input. And so we're going to give it an input ID. That's the first thing. And we'll call that date selection. And then the label, we'll just name date range, value equals null, min max. So min equals min as dot date example Excel and date column. Okay, so that's just going to take the lowest of the date in the date column of our data set. And then we want to make the max equal to max as dot date. I don't think I did that right. As dot date. There we go. As dot date example Excel and then the date column. So now we have the min and the max. And what else do we need as arguments in the date selection? So format, that's fine. Start view, week starts, language width, starting date, either a date object or a string, and if null, the default will use the current date in the client's time zone. So I'm just going to make the starting value the first date, so we'll do 2022 09 19. 2022 09 19. Alright, so let's save that. So now we should have our input for the date selection on the sidebar of our dashboard. So let's run that and see what comes up. Okay. So yeah, we have our correct date range. However, we need a date selection. We want a range of values, right? So again, this is something I don't know how to do, so I'm going to look it up real quick. So date range input shiny. Okay, so it's date range input instead of date input. And nothing else should have to change. I just have to change the name of that I was using. So I'm going to X out of this, go back here. So instead of date input, we'll do date range input. Save that, and now we'll run the app. Unused argument, so I'll just take that out. Let's see what happens when I get rid of that. Run the app. Save it. Okay, so now we have a range selector. And we can choose the first date. So starts 2022 09/19 to 2022 26. We can change that to 30. But right now it's not doing anything. You're just selecting dates and it shows up in the input, but it doesn't do anything over here. So we want to connect that to our histogram, right? So here's what we can do. So I'll X out of here. And now I'm going to show you a little bit about reactive functions. So I'm just going to get rid of what was commented out from the original app. And we're going to say, so you're going to type, what this is going to do, it's going to be a reactive function, which basically that means that when a user does something, it's going to react accordingly. So we want to say when a user chooses those inputs, it's going to update and filter the data set on those date inputs that we selected, right? Because that's what we want to do. We want to select the minimum date and the maximum date and only look at that range, right? So let's say this is, we'll name it date underscore example Excel. And then we're going to assign that with a reactive. Okay. And then we want that to, let's think about this, because we want it to filter on the data set based on the date ranges, right? So we need a reactive function that takes in the input from the UI, which is the date range input, so date selection. And we need the min date and the max date, right? So to test this, before I go into the actual reactive function, I need to see how I can get the min date from that input and the max date from that input. So I'm just going to edit this, or go to code and comment that out. And now we're going to make another output. So this is output this is text test, I'll call it. And we're going to do render text. And we just want to render text for the input date selection. And let's see what comes out from that. So save that, go over to the UI, and then I want to add let's render text. I believe we're going to use text output. Or we'll do a different one. We'll do verbatim text output. And then we need the name of that output, so text test. And now what this is going to do is it's just going to show on the screen. Oh, that has to go inside the sidebar where I want it. Okay. And I need a comma at the end of that. All right. So now it's going to have the date range input, and then right below that is going to be a text output of what that input was. Or at least that's what should happen. I'm going to run it. Okay, so we can see that it shows up as 19261 and to 19261. Well, that's an odd way. So something isn't right there. I don't know why it would be 19. Okay. So let's do, instead of just having the output be the input date selection, we'll try, let's see what the first element in that, maybe it's a list. So we want to see the first date, right? Okay, so that did not work either. Now nothing shows up. And this is kind of the unfortunate part about using RShiny, is that it's hard to tell, like when you're making a mistake and you run the app, it's hard to tell what actually the problem is. Whereas if you were just working in a normal file, you could see pretty easily. Attempt to apply non-function. Okay, I figured as much. And this doesn't work. I'm just going to look it up because I don't want to waste too much time on that. Okay, so there, that did work, but we can see the first element, it's still that 19261. So that doesn't help us too much, right? So we're going to go back and we're going to say reactive function RShiny, and we'll say date range input filter. So reactive date range input filtering data set with observed events. So let's see what this says. It's from RStudio, so it should be helpful. Date range, reactive date range, but I'm getting in a loop of yuckiness. I feel that. Not sure if I understand your problem, but I believe you forgot to transform input date range to a date object, and filter function doesn't use this AND operator. Okay, so we need to change that to day, month, year. We can try that. See how he does it. So he's doing it in his server. If input product, filter invoice, input date range. So we'll do see, the weird thing about it is that we need to be able to filter the data set from the minimum date to the maximum date. So we'll try what they said. So we'll go back to date example Excel. We'll just uncomment that. We're at reactive. So what we're going to do in this reactive function is take our original data set, example Excel. Oh, I'm going to have to I need tidyverse in order to do tidyverse functions. Which, if you haven't yet, I have a past live stream where I did a full kind of tutorial in using tidyverse, so data manipulation, initial data steps, which you're going to really need for almost every project you do. But we're going to take example Excel, and we're going to filter that by Well, let's just start and we'll see if we can get one row of data, and then we'll go from there. So we're going to say filter, and how did they specify? So invoice date is greater than or equal to, oh, okay. So that's how you would do it. Greater than or equal to that day, and less than or equal to that day. Okay, so that's how we can do that. So date, that the name of the, yeah, date is greater than or equal to the first date, right? And they specify 1 and 2. Okay. So inputs, oh, we need the day, month, year function, which just turns that into a day, month, year object rather than that weird integer we saw before. Input date selection 1. So it needs to be greater than that first one, and it needs to be less than that second one. So less than or equal to day, month, year, input date selection, and the second instance of that. So we'll save that. And now what I want to do to test this, so I have our data set and it should be filtering correctly. But what I want to do is just show I'm going to just separate our stuff here. So everything below there is output. Everything above is going to be reactive functions. So here we have our output. We'll say test table, render data table. Always have your curly brackets and your parentheses, or your, not parentheses, whatever they're called, you know. Render your data table, and we'll just call the reactive function, which that reactive function itself just makes a new data table or data frame, whatever you want to call it. So we'll save that, go back to the UI, and we want to see data table output, and we just want to see that data table so that we make sure that it's filtering correctly. So we're going to say test table, copy that, and put it there. We'll save that. Now we'll run the app, and let's see what happens. Problem while computing. Maybe it's because they're the same date. We'll try. Okay, so from September 19th to September 26th, and we're getting a problem. We'll just go back and see. Let's see what the error gives us. Could not find function DMY. What is the DMY? Is that oh, it's in lubridate. So we need to add library lubridate. We'll save that, and we'll just rerun it, and hopefully that should work now. So object, let's see, from 19th to the 26th. So we're still getting an error. What is that now? So date needs to be greater than or equal to that first. Oh, I didn't close the function. That could be why. So DMY that, DMY that, there. Where's this one going? Okay, I had an extra symbol in there, so hopefully that is why we were getting an error. Be careful with that. Okay, yep. Okay, so now everything's working. We can see that from that date to that date there is no data available in the table. It should show one line, but let's see what it says here. So no data available in the table. That is weird. So these are the kind of issues you can run into, and I just want to show like kind of my thought process when I'm trying to fix them. So what could be going wrong here? So let's go back to what we did before with that output to test like what those values actually are. So I'm going to add another output in. This is going to be the text test again, which, okay, so that's not there. And we'll say render text, and we just want to see what the input, well, we're going to use a DMY function, and then the input date selection 1. So let's see what that looks like. We'll save there, and then we'll go back to the UI, verbatim text test. So reload the app. NA. So it's NA now. Okay, so now we are going to go back and look up why lubridate DMY returns NA. It doesn't look like what we need. So we'll just go to the Lubridate documentation. So I hope you guys are still getting something out of this, even though I'm struggling myself. But that's why I wanted to do this. I wanted to publicly struggle so that you can kind of see a thought process of somebody who doesn't know exactly, everything from the start, and kind of see how we can go through and fix those issues. So we're going to see the DMY function, right? Where is that? I'm going to go back to the original post that I was on and see maybe if there's something else that they had done. As factor, product, as factor, start, end, format. I'm not sure if I understand your problem, but I believe you forgot to transform it to a date object. And filter function doesn't use this AND operator. So he only used single brackets around that. I wonder if that would cause an issue. I doubt it would, but it may. So let's just get those into single brackets, and we'll go back and we'll do the same for the original to see if that actually fixes the issue. If it does, that would be a really simple fix that, that's something that can happen as well. Still showing up as NA. I don't understand that. But really what you should be seeing here is a data table that's going to be filtered on this date range that you choose. But we're going to have to go back and figure out exactly why that's happening. So he said he used observe. Let's see where his server. So let's see what it does if I were to just use day, month, year on that first selection. So we'll say example Excel date, and we'll say the first one, or the second one, I guess. Text test. Huh. So it's weird that it still shows an NA. So it's failing to parse. So let's see if we look up a failing to parse. Lubridate DMY failing to parse. Well, since I can't really find anything on that, I'm just going to back out. But if anybody knows the answer to this, go ahead, feel free to leave a comment. But I'm just going to skip over it for now because it's not vital to what I want here. But so for that reactive function, I'm just going to comment it out. But if I was not live streaming right now or making a video, I would definitely try to figure it out. But I don't want to spend too much time on it because it's not super important. Let's go back to see where we were. So we have our date range input selection still that does nothing. We have our graph. But let's get one more graph in before we end for this episode. We can go back to our example file, and now let's say we want to see, we want some information about how much time we're relaxing, because maybe on some days we feel like we relaxed way too much and we didn't do enough, and then other days we kind of just, got to work and did our stuff. So let's figure out how we can plot that. So you can see just looking at it that we have a minimum of 1 hour of relaxation, and it looks like a max of 10. So we can do another distribution plot, but we can also think about how can we make these a little bit more telling than just showing the distribution, right? So we know that it looks like there's going to be about an average of 4 or 5 on that. We could just show distribution and then see what that looks like, and then figure out maybe if we want to do an additional plot to look at some further things, right? So let's go to output, and we'll call this relax dist. So relax distribution. We'll go to render plots again, and then we get our curly brackets. We'll start our next ggplot. I'm going to say data equals example Excel. Our aesthetics, we want, actually, yeah, let's go x equals relax with a capital R. And then we're going to add geom hist again, histogram. We'll add an additional one, and we'll title it, so GG title, and we'll call that distribution of relaxation hours. Save it, and now let's see, I forgot, we have to add it into the UI, so we'll go down under the original plot output, and we'll go into another one, relax dist. And then I'm hoping, it's like once we iterate this and try to get it into a different format, data must be a data frame or other object queryable by fortify, not an S3 object with class uneval. Did you accidentally pass AES to the data argument? I've never seen that error before. ggplot, aesthetic. That is odd. X equals relax. Data must be a data frame. So what's up with that? Example Excel table df. So, that's why. Data, not date. Make sure you spell things correctly. Alright, so now we can see our distribution of hours slept and our distribution of relaxation hours. So we can see that it's kind of a bimodal distribution, but not super helpful, right? So we have different levels up here, and we can see again, since this is not a continuous variable, it's not very helpful. So let's say instead of doing that, we want to look at, now this is not good statistical way to do this, but instead of doing a histogram, I'm going to do a distribution plot, which 2D contour, density. Let's try that. And so instead of doing a bar for each level and count, it's just going to be a curved surface. So let's save that and see what it looks like. All right, so now we can see, I did it for the hours slept instead of the relaxation hours. So So that's a simple fix. We'll just go back geom histogram again, and then we'll make this one geom density. All right, and then so you can see it's applied a smoothing effect to that histogram, and you can see that like there's kind of a tail to the right here where we have a lot of relaxation hours, but a vast majority of the days we're doing between 2 to 5 hours of relaxation, which I mean to me sounds like a pretty reasonable amount, but you know that's for you to decide. But so now we have a density plot and a histogram plot, but let's say we want one more and we want to compare. So we want to see how long we're doing, how school compares to relaxation hours. So we want to see like on one axis we want to see how many hours we did school, and then on the other axis we want to see how many hours we relax. So maybe the days where we do more school we actually relax a lot less. Or, you know, maybe the opposite. Maybe the days we have school, we just want to chill and you know, do nothing the rest of the day. So we'll see. Let's go back and we'll do one more plot and then we'll end it there. We'll call this sleep underscore v underscore relax. We'll do one more render plot. Curly brackets. ggplot data, not date, equals example Excel. Aesthetics x equals sleep. And y equals relax. And then we'll want geom scatter or geom point. Title, and then we'll add a title, gg title, and we want hours of sleep versus hours of relaxation. Save that, go back to the UI, and then we'll add in our last plot. Now what I'm going to do in the next episode of this is I want to show you guys a little bit more about filtering and reactive functions, since we kind of ran into a little bit of trouble with that. We're going to go and we're going to say the name of that output, copy it over to the UI. But reactive functions and filtering is a super important part of a dashboard, so that's going to be the entire focus of the next one. And I'll come with probably a little bit of a bigger data set now that we have kind of an example of what our visualizations could look like, and we're going to customize those a little bit more as well. But we'll save that and go over here. So now we have our distribution of hours slept, we have our distribution of relaxation hours, and now we have what is the hours of sleep versus hours of relaxation. So we can see on the days that we sleep a lot more, it seems like there is actually a little bit less relaxation throughout the day. So what's interesting is that it looks to be, and we can't say one is the cause of the other, there is some sort of correlation between the two. So it looks like the days where we slept only 5 hours, we relaxed a lot more than the days where we slept 8. Now we'd have to run a statistical test to see if this is true. If there's actually causation, we have to actually, run an experiment on this. But we can say that there is some sort of relationship, or there is some sort of correlation between the two, seemingly from this plot. But now that we have 3 plots, and we do have this input that does nothing, in the next episode we're going to be looking at some inputs that actually do something. We're going to be looking at filtering a data set, and we're going to look at reactive functions and how those relate to those filters, and how you can use those actually in your visualizations so that when you do filter, they show up. But if this was helpful, go ahead and leave a like, and also go ahead and check out the description. I have links to my Discord, where you can come and ask me any questions you want, and I also have a link to my newsletter where I talk about statistics and data science, machine learning, and AI topics weekly. So go ahead and check those out, but other than that, thank you for watching, and I will see you guys soon.